From Cask Cartel, this is the Cartel Hour. I'm Cameron Stevens.
And my name is Seth Benheim.
Together, we're tasting all kinds of spirits with master distillers, celebrity guests, and more. We're here to learn a little bit and drink a little bit. So grab a glass and let's enjoy. Welcome back to the Infusery for another episode of the Cartel Hour. My name is Cameron Stevens.
And my name is Seth Benheim. And today we are drinking AnCnoc single malt Scotch whiskey.
I am so excited for this. And we have Gordon Bruce with us. Gordon, how's it going, man?
Oh, fantastic. Great. It's a great time of year. It's good to be here. And I'm learning how technology works. What more could I probably ask for?
Great. And it is noon, well, a little after noon our time. And in Scotland, it is what, like 8-ish your time?
Yeah, it's just gone 8 p.m. So it's still daylight. Days are stretching. Spring's here. It's a nice time of year. It's a good time of year to drink whiskey, actually. Yeah.
Perfect. Is 8 p.m. a little late or is it early for you to get started?
I've been in here since 7 o'clock this morning. So it's a short day so far.
Okay. Fair enough. Fair enough.
I would argue, is there ever a bad time or bad season to be drinking whiskey? But we'll get to that in a minute.
Yes, indeed.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your role with AnCnoc whiskey?
Please.
AnCnoc's a slightly unusual one. And normally, a single malt whiskey is named after the distillery where it's produced. I manage Knockdhu Distillery, Northeast Highlands. We're about an hour north of Aberdeen. We bought the distillery in 1983. It had been mothballed for. We bought the distillery in 1988. Sorry, it had been mothballed for 5 years by its previous owners. We bought the distillery with stocks, Knockdhu single malt. When we bought it, we started to sell the whiskey as Knockdhu, and things were great for 2 or 3 years, no problem at all. But then things get a little bit messy because there's another distillery with a very similar name, Knockdhu. And the owners of Knockdhu thought, okay, this is confusing people. We've got Knockdhu, we've got Knockdhu on the shelf. So a gentleman's agreement was reached, and we changed the name of the whiskey from Knockdhu to AnCnoc. Knockdhu in Gaelic means black hill. That's the hill where we draw our water from. AnCnoc in Gaelic means the hill. So we've kept the connection with the hill.
Beautiful. And what do you do specifically with the distillery?
Make tea, make coffee, paint walls, and just anything. I'm basically just here to add a touch of glamour to things. That's the life of a modern distillery manager. Now we're really responsible for making sure they get the right quantity and quality raw materials coming in to the process the whole way through, making sure the guys are well, safe and sane. And at the end of the day, making sure we've got a nice, consistent quality and new make spirit leaving the door at the end of the week. I mean, no 2 days are the same. Every day is a school day in a distillery. It's a real learning process. And it keeps life interesting. And how boring would it be if you just poured malty barley on one end and poured whiskey at the other end? Wouldn't be a lot of fun, would it? You know?
I take it this is not your first foray in the single malt Scotch industry. How long have you been with AnCnoc?
I've been here for 15 years. I moved down here in 2006. For 12 years prior to that, I worked at a sister distillery, Ballblair Distillery, in the North Highlands up near Tane. And six and a half years before that, my hometown distillery was just Pulteney up in Wick, the very, very top of Scotland. It's so far north, you take 2 steps backwards and you fall off the end of Scotland. It's that far north. You know.
Wow. And all of those distilleries are under the same family of brands, actually, same owner, parent company for all 3.
We are now. When I started in Pulteney, the Pulteney was owned by Hiram Walker and Sons.
Oh, okay.
In 1988. In fact, I've still got my first distillery pay slip, and it's titled Hiram Walker, so I'll keep that one for posterity.
That's
Hiram Walker became Allied Distillers. Allied sold Pulteney in 1995. Inverhouse bought it then. So Inverhouse have been very good. They've recognised service at previous distilleries, despite the fact they're owned by other companies at the time. So all told, it's almost 33 years in the industry now.
Wonderful.
Well, it's great. 1988 was the year we were both born.
Yes,
so
indeed.
you
We're
can say
youngins.
you've been making
Piss off.
You've been making whiskey as long as
You are kidding.
we are not.
Yeah. I am self-professed. I'm a huge fan of AnCnoc. I've been drinking, this version of it for a very long time. It's my fiance's favorite Scotch, dollar for sure. She likes a very wide range of Scotches, everything from lighter all the way to super peaty. And this is the one that she continues to revisit. So I am personally really, really excited to have you guys on the show. And one of the places that I was interested to start with you, Gordon, and ask you a little bit about is, the distiller's been around for a very long time, and all of the methods of creating the Scotch are very traditional, but yet you guys have such a more modern label. You have the way that you're branded and everything is sort of bringing a level of modern to Scotch. Can you tell me how you kind of balance that, all of the tradition in the past with where you're going today?
Well, I'm just the daft wee laddie is paid to make whiskey. That's my role in life. That's my role with this industry. That's my role with this company. Knockdhu is a very, very, as you say, it's very traditional, very hands-on distillery. In 2006, when I moved down here, we moved on to single-man production. So that's one operator on shift at a time. We used to have two guys on shift at a time. Moved to 7 days, 7-day production, single-man operation in 2006. And that's quite easy to do these days. You just throw a lot of money at it. And the technology is there, it's well tested, it's well proven. I've got enough power in this little wee BlackBerry here to run the distillery if I wanted from my kitchen at home. And that's something we deliberately avoided doing here at Knockdhu. Everything is still done manually. It's a level of automation that we're comfortable with. Biggest concern is if you let computers do everything, if you let SCADA systems make whiskey for you, people forget how to do things. So in a generation, we could lose a whole generation of skills quite easily. So guys are happy doing what they do. The guys they're on the feet, they're busy the whole shift. They're constantly on the go. And honestly, I couldn't speak too highly of the guys here. They look forward to coming to work. They come into work with a smile on their face. They enjoy what they do, and they go home happy. And I love to think it's maybe a bit arty, but I think that feeling of pride and ownership and love, it passes into the final product as well.
How do you feel when you walk into some of the more state-of-the-art new distilleries that I've been to ones where you've got a control panel, a big control center, and you got one guy managing the entire process. One person pushes a couple buttons, turns a few knobs, and next thing you know, the grains are getting milled. They're getting sent over through, transporter over to like a fermentation tank, and then everything's added manually and everything's hooked up. All you got to do is load, the right yeast in the right part or the right grains, and the rest of it is the water's already hooked up. Everything's kind of happening automatically. How do you feel walking into some of these newer distilleries that are operating like that?
I'm not a complete Luddite. I need to say that. In some instances, it is a necessary evil. Some of these modern sites, everything's happening really, really quickly. You're talking really quick mashing cycles, quick turnaround cycles for stills, and massive volumes. And physically, unless you found the right person, it's unlikely you'll be able to run the place successfully unless you introduce some automation. Interestingly enough, I left school in 1982. That's before you guys were born. And I went to study computers. And you imagine computer systems in 1982 was the good old black screen with a green square writing, DOS, Anvil, Fortran and stuff like that. And I did that for 2 years. I thought, shit, computers are never going to catch on. So I left that job, and I left that course of study and got a real job instead. Automation-wise, one of our sister distilleries is Speyburn Distillery. Speyburn does really well with you guys in the States.
Yeah.
We spent a lot of money there. I mean, Speyburn got a massive revamp 6-7 years ago. That was a £4 or £5 million project. And just the speed that everything happens and the volumes you're speaking about, they need to employ technology to run that place.
For capacity, if you were to compare the output of Speyburn versus AnCnoc in terms of just what you can put out, how different is it being more automated at Speyburn versus the manual side of AnCnoc?
It's not just totally down to automation. Speed of the process. Our mashing cycle is 8 hours from start to finish. Speyburn have a mash done that wouldn't look out of place in Star Trek, and it turns a mash around 4 hours. So
wow.
we can do 20 mashes a week. At AnCnoc, well, 168 hours a week in AnCnoc. They got 168 hours a week in Speyburn as well. But we can do 28-hour mashing cycles in our 168 hours. Speyburn can do over 40. They can do 42 mashes a week.
Wow.
And they're bigger mashes than we do as well.
Well, then, I mean, focusing on these traditional methods, because I think that's one of the cornerstones of the brand and ultimately of the final product. I guess what I'd love to know is, I mean, we don't have enough time for you to take us through every little detail, but what I'm curious is there any particular aspect of the whiskey making process that is so traditional that you guys are still doing in an older fashion that basically everybody else has moved on from?
I don't think we've got anything that quite unique. The thing that frustrates me a little bit is when people think about Scotch whisky and they think about distilleries, they think of these big, sexy copper pots, distills. That's what everybody seems to focus on. But I wish more people realise that the stills are essentially just an extraction process. Okay, we've got a little wee bit of chemical conversion, chemical reactions taking place there. But most of this, all of the alcohol, most of the smells and most of the flavours in Scotch whisky are actually produced during the mashing and the fermentation stages. Most important tool for us in the mash house is actually a broom handle. I don't know if you've been to distillery when you're mashing in, when you're mixing your dry grist with your hot liquor, when the temperature's so important there, so you don't nuke the enzymes that are still active in the malt at that stage. But by us holding a broom handle in below the mashing spout, the grist water comes out the mashing spout, the consistency is very, very similar to porridge. So you holding your broom handle below there, you can tell if your mash is the right consistency by how the wet grist piles up on top of the broom handle. And God's given us these things, he's given us this thing, and he's given us this thing. So let's try to use them. We don't need to rely on machinery. I think people can react quicker than computers.
I love it. Well,
people call me old-fashioned, but hey ho.
Well, I mean, speaking of old-fashioned, I would like to see exactly how that translates. I haven't had some AnCnoc in a little while, so do you want to? And
I've never had the 12 or the 18.
Yeah.
I did crack into this.
And I've never had the 18.
I'm gonna say Rascan, but I'm sure I'm pronouncing that incorrectly. But
let's go ahead and
your pronunciation has been absolutely spot on.
Yeah. There you go, Seth.
Well, right on.
Are you, Gordon? Are you gonna drink with us?
As long as you don't tell my wife.
Your secret is safe with us.
So the right place to start, I assume, is with the 12-year.
12 sounds good. Yeah.
12 sounds good. We're popping a fresh bottle right now. Now I'm excited to see what Cameron.
12 is so bloody good. This is all we have left in stock.
Wait, which one is that?
That's a nearly empty bottle of 12. That's all we have in stock just now.
Oh, geez. Well, I'm sure if there was anybody who could get another couple of bottles, it'd be you.
Okay.
Here we go.
Now, Cameron and I like to kind of talk the listener through, and the viewers, if you're watching this on YouTube. And if you're not, please go to YouTube and watch this live so you can see our beautiful faces. we love to look at it. We love to nose it. We like to talk about the color, the flavor, everything about the whiskey and our experience as we go through it, and just kind of, ask questions about why this, why that. So, I mean, already the one thing, so what kind of barrels are being used for a 12-year-old single malt?
12-year-olds probably somewhere about 95% ex-bourbon casks. That will be a mixture, first fill and refill casks, and 5% sherry casks.
Oh, so there is a little bit of sherry. Okay.
And that's
very small amount. Yeah.
Got it. So maybe take us, as we start to nose, as we start to taste, can you tell us, I assume this is kind of your flagship. It's the one that I see around most often. Who is this designed for, and how is this particular 12-year created?
Well, as you say, our 12-year-old is our introductory malt whiskey. 12-year-old is designed to appeal to so many different people. It's such an approachable whiskey. It's very sweet, very smooth, soft, subtle, elegant. It's such an easy whiskey to drink. In the UK, that's bottled at 40%. You got a 43% 12-year-old in the States.
43.
Yeah. Okay, lucky you.
I love that extra little.
Why
little
is
bit.
that? Why do we get a higher proof than you guys?
Can I take the fifth? Is it your Fifth Amendment on that one?
I mean, we do.
I'm not sure we deserve it, so there's got to be a reason behind it.
Buy more of it. I don't know.
You must have asked nicely. Yeah. I've got a wee sample of New Make spirit here. I don't know if you've tried Knockdhu New Make before.
Have not.
So bear with me here. So it's New Make spirit, totally clear, totally colourless. We always keep our distillates or New Make below 70% alcohol by here, 70% alcohol by volume here. We find if it creeps above 70, we lose some of the notes that we want to retain, some of the smells and flavours that come through from the mashing side. It becomes a little bit too clean. So New Make spirit, we're looking for something fresh, fruity. It's quite estery, and we've got a little bit of malt, a little bit of cereal in there as well. And lo and behold, 12 years later, we still have those key notes in the bottled product.
Well, I'm very jealous that you guys get a chance to obviously taste such early on in the process. One of the things I particularly love about this 12-year is that, yes, it is a little bit lighter in body. However, the nose is just absolutely fantastic. I mean, this is one of those scotches that you can give to somebody, and, if they maybe aren't as familiar with, really getting in and digging into a nose to help it, enhance the rest of the tasting experience. I mean, it's lovely. You get apples, you get bright lemons, you get a little bit of this lovely floral note. To me, what I also like about this is I get that graininess from Scotch that I do like to look for, and that sometimes gets lost in lighter Scotches, and it's definitely present here, just straight up on the nose before you even taste it.
It's an excellent dram. I love the bourbon barrel influence there that is prevalent on the nose. It's by far giving a beautiful lingering finish on this thing. Very, very good floral notes, like you said, Cam. I get the apples. Thoroughly get like those really sort of what kind of, let's say, a porous sort of fruit, like a pear almost. It's really nice on the front end there.
And then there's this like kind of light woodsy characteristic that's this sort of just, to me, I feel like it's probably coming from the water. And actually, maybe I should use that as a segue, because I happen to know that you guys, you have your own essentially marshes, right? You have a whole process involving your water and reusing the water and how the water is obtained. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
Yeah. Thanks very much for the comments on the whiskey. If you want a job writing tasting notes for me, drop me an email. That's great. Thank you very much. I think you summed up what we're trying to achieve perfectly. Good job. It seems crazy to think in this part of the world, the north of Scotland, water is a scarce resource, but climate change is real. We don't see the same winters as we used to see. We used to depend on getting good heavy fall of snow on the Knock Hill, a nice steady, slow thaw, and that kept the springs topped up. And let's make whiskey for the rest of the year. We haven't had a proper winter in 10 years. So every drop of water that we extract from the springs in the hill, we've just got to use a little bit smarter these days. So we're now looking at use every drop of water we extract, we'll use 6-7 different times. Added bonus of that is we can reclaim so much energy as well. I mean, energy that was previously wasted as heat, we can now capture and make very, very good use of in the distillery. Sustainability is such a buzzword these days, and rightly so. And that's something that's not just Knockdhu are focused on, but that the whole industry is very, very focused on that. And the marshes you referred to is our effluent treatment system. This is a new one for us. We're used to working with hammers and spanners and mechanical things, but here we're trying to work with nature. So essentially we're using plants to clean up some of the distillery effluent before we discharge treated effluent into a local water source and put it back into a barn, back into a river, back into the sea. So in numbers, we've got 6 sets of cells, 2,000 square metres surface area in total, 17 different species of plants and 21,000 plants overall. And the different plants target different compounds in the effluent. I mean, it's a food to them. So we run them 2 banks of 3. So you feed the mucky stuff in the top. It runs through on gravity through the first pair of cells, drops into the next pair of cells, into the final 3rd pair of cells. And if everything's gone well, by the time it gets to the bottom, it's clean enough to drink. And that's great. That's not 45 tons of carbon off our footprint each year, just by taking lorries off the road. That's 8 or 9 lorries per week that we had to take away before, have processed off-site. We can now do it on-site.
I think it's a really undiscussed part of distilling and brewing and winemaking, where a lot of efforts are being made in this area, and it's rarely discussed, rarely marketed. Yet everyone's playing a role, you guys especially doing your part. And it's really important that people, take a step further. Don't just follow a brand on Instagram, but go on their website, see what the brands are doing in the way of, and especially with the Knock, see what they're doing in the way of being a greener, more sustainable contribution to their environment, their ecosystem, all the the plant life and everything going on around the distillery. There's a lot happening beneath the surface that's not on the label of the bottle. So important to recognize that, I think, and talk about it for sure. One thing I'm noticing is like this bottle, you need to sit down with like a group of friends, get a couple couples together. You get the charcuterie board out. We got some cashews here, some salted cashews, and the pairing is perfect. There's a little like subtle, not a dark, heavy nut, but like a not praline or anything like that. But this has got like that almondy sort of cashew, macadamia nut sort of nuttiness to it. And it's so perfect with the cashews. And I can just see like the charcuterie board, some prosciutto, some brie, some cheeses coming out, and then you sip this, and every bite, every morsel that follows is so perfectly paired. It's excellent charcuterie board whiskey.
Well, and what's interesting is that is not a note that I was picking up when we first poured, but after a little bit of water, that really nice, ever so slightly spiciness from the ex-bourbon barrels fades a little bit more, and that gets brought to the forefront, which is cool.
It begs that salty sort of next bite. It's almost quenching in a way to have something salty right after you drink this.
Yeah,
it's perfect.
Whiskey and cheese is a match made in heaven. I've got a good friend from Italy, comes across every couple of years, and he brings me a big box of Parmesan. And the saltiness of a really good, well-aged Parmesan, the saltiness of that bounces off the sweetness of the 12-year-old so well. It's a match made in heaven. Yeah. Haven't tried cashews. I'm going to go home and try that tonight. That sounds really good.
There you go.
Excellent. They could not have been. And this is just what we had here. I didn't do this on purpose. I just was like, all right, we don't have any crackers today. All we've got.
I know, because it's like noon.
Yeah. And we're trying to we're trying to go to work after this.
I know.
Get back to work.
Yeah,
So where do we go from here?
I assume the 18.
I assume the 18 before we try this Rascan peated version of a Highland single malt. So would you say the 18 is the proper order?
Yeah, no. If you're doing a vertical tasting, you always leave the peat to the end, I think.
Yeah.
I figured, and they're all, well, actually this one's 46%. The next two are both 46, so we're going up 3% here.
So Gordon, while Seth goes ahead and opens this bottle and we do a little pour, I'd love if you have any great stories from maybe when you first joined with the distillery or anything a little bit behind the scenes that you'd love to tell that kind of showcases maybe not just what the brand is about, but what it's like to be there and be working so closely with everything, the grains and everything in this process to create this whiskey.
Well, I need to be very careful about which stories I say on air in case they get back to the powers that be.
Well, the only person you're allowed to throw under the bus is yourself.
That's what I'm worried about. I've got 10 years to retirement. This is ownership. On paper, the distillery is owned by Ty Bev, Benver House Distillers. That's on paper. In reality, the distillery is owned by us. And the guys absolutely adore this place. They got a real sense of pride and ownership for the place. You had some pretty shitty weather in Texas about 2 months ago. These kind of really crazy temperatures. Well, we had the same weather that weekend. It was minus 18 degrees here.
Oof.
Well, minus 18 centigrade. It was quite chilly. And because it was so cold, with very, very fine, dusty, powdery snow, the wind got up on Friday night, blocked all the roads. So the guy that was on the 6 a.m., 6 p.m. shift at the weekend, he's got a 15-minute drive to get here. He left his house at 4 o'clock in the morning to get in here for 6 a.m. He got in here at 8:30, but he got here. That's the important thing. He got here
in one piece.
So that's the kind of guys we're working with. There's no excuses for not coming to work. I don't think of specific stories. I must say the guys are so good. It doesn't matter what job, what task they've got. I mean, there are some pretty stinky jobs to do in the distillery. If you're going to dig solids out the bottom of an effluent tank, it's not a particularly pleasant thing to do, but the guys just roll their sleeves up, smile on their face, and just get on and do it. I mean, there's no point in mourning about it. It's part and parcel of the job.
Well, I assume they at least get to have a little bit of whiskey at maybe lunchtime, or is that a no-go policy?
Yeah, those days are long gone. Distilleries used to have their daily drams. So each distillery in the area would have its daily dram time, and you would find the local postmen, local engineers, local policemen. They would work out the different dram times for the distilleries, and they would join the queue with the distillery workforce to get their daily dram. Yeah. So, I mean, in Scotland, this part of the world, just if you were expecting post anytime after 3 p.m. on a weekday, just forget it. It wasn't going to arrive because the postie was pissed by that stage. We haven't done drams for north of 30 years now, so the guys get a very generous product allowance. We're a wee bit more attuned to health and safety, and we obviously don't condone drink driving or drinking at work. I'm afraid that's not on these days. Yeah.
Totally understand.
So the guys get a product allowance, so so they can have whatever they want from the range, and they can enjoy it with their family and friends in the safety of their home on a Friday night.
So, listeners, if you're looking for a job, he said generous product allowance. That's if you're looking to have a little extra bonus. There you go. Tell us a little bit about this 18-year-old, and what I'm really curious about, especially, is the barrels, because we have a significantly darker color on this one. I'm going to guess maybe a bit more sherry influence, potentially a lot more sherry influence. I haven't even nosed or tasted it yet, but just from the color alone, that's what I'm expecting. But tell us about the 18.
Yeah. Well, the 18-year-olds, the liquid spends 15, 16 years maturing in ex-bourbon casks. And then they'll rack the liquid into first fill Oloroso casks for another 2-3 years further maturation. The timing, the age is worked really, really well. For me, we get the best of both worlds. You've still got these lovely toffee, vanilla notes that you're going to get from the bourbon casks. And that's not been masked or it's been added to by the spiciness and the dry fruit notes we're going to get from the sherry. So I think the balance is very, very good. The 18's, as you say, it's slightly stronger at 46% alcohol. The 12-year-old is the only one from the current range that's been chill filtered. Everything else is bottled at 46%. It's natural colour and it's non-chill filtered.
Interesting. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because I'd love to know a little bit more about the decision to use chill filtering on the 12 and then not use it on the rest of the line.
I suppose that the 12-year-olds are entry-level whiskey, and different people are going to treat different whiskies in different ways. It's not up to me to tell people how to treat whiskey or drink whiskey, and it's a very, very personal choice. 12-year-old, you could stick that bottle in the fridge and the product clarity would remain absolutely spot on. It wouldn't affect it at all. You try that with a 46% non-chill filter bottling, you probably would get a bit of a haze or a bit of a cloud forming.
Yeah.
Same thing, if you're going to throw ice in it, the 12-year-old's going to, in my opinion, putting ice in malt whiskey is something similar to digging your testicles in the North Sea. It's just going to go. But it's not for me. But if that's what people want to do, it's their dram, so they can enjoy it as they want. I don't know.
That's going to be the phrase.
The jury's still out.
No, you're fine. I think that's the.
Did I say that?
Phrase. No, it's totally fine. I think that's probably my favorite new phrase: is dipping your testicles in the North Sea.
Yep. There's a famous.
You know what I'm getting at, though.
They asked you may be familiar, Booker No, at Jim Beam. They asked him, how do you want people to drink your bourbon? He goes, shit, you could put Coke in it as long as you're paying for it. I don't care. As long as you're paying the money for it, he does not care. He just wants to make sure everyone's having a good time. But no, I get what you're saying. Look, here's my question is, I love Oloroso. I lean towards Oloroso. I look for Oloroso and I buy anything finished that I can find and afford that's finished in Oloroso. So why does it not state that it's finished with Oloroso for a few years? It's such an important, and it is so prevalent on the body of this thing. I mean, this is a great Oloroso finish.
Yeah. Lovely, oily.
Beautiful Scotch whiskey. My God, it's delicious. It's absolutely, this is a phenomenal pour. And I hate to say, I really liked this, but now that I've tried this, it's like, okay, I'm going to buy this one if I can go up a level and go for that Oloroso finish. I love it.
Yeah, I am curious. Why is sherry? Why is Oloroso cask finish not on the bottle?
As I say, I'm just the daft lad who's paid to make the stuff.
Fair enough. Do we know the general? Forgive me, you may have said this earlier, but it's later finished. So it's ex-bourbon, then it's finished in sherry.
Yeah,
15 years.
Got it. Yeah.
So 15, 16 years in bourbon, and then 2 to 3 years in sherry. Yeah.
So I just had the cashew afterwards. Not the same. Totally different.
Very
effect. Mouthfeel after having about 3 or 4 sips of the 18 really had the mouthfeel is a little drier. It's not It's not playing the same way at all.
Do you want to do tasting notes on this one?
Yeah, I'm getting, got the sherry cask finish on there. The color was indicative, as you pointed out before even smelling it, but you totally get those beautiful dark fruit notes. The top, there's a little more evidence of, I don't want to call it smokiness, but maybe a carbon sort of, maybe those extra years in those bourbon barrels pulled a little bit more out, in that you're getting a little more bite of char. And then it's also, but that's kind of at the front end and very much more on the nose. And then you're getting a little more fruit, a little more hints of sweet, and also kind of a dry wine tannic sort of effect. But not like that Cabernet. I've had some this is like medium dry. I've had uber dry whiskeys that'll pull the life out of your mouth and suck it all out.
Well, what's beautiful about this is you get that nice oiliness in the middle, and then it goes to that dry finish, which means that it's a very interesting progression as it goes through. And the other thing that I find so fascinating about this one, because look, I'm definitely a sherry cask finish fan in general, but this is not overly sherried, because there are definitely some scotches that are sherry bombs, right? You get that it's ever so slightly cloying, and it's viscously sweet.
That was Abunad. The Abelauer Abunad was like super
big
sherry.
It's just like a truck driving forward with sherry.
That's at the far end. This isn't that far.
We get this nice middle ground where you have this marriage of the ex-bourbon finish, and then it brings it back through the sherry at the end. And I think, to me, that makes it's a little bit more delicate in that way, but it is more complex in that way too. It's not nearly as one-dimensional as just going straight sherry.
No. Well said.
I think we're seeking balance in everything that we do, I think. I've tried some of these sherry bombs and shit. You can taste the sherry, and you can maybe taste a little bit of whiskey in the background.
Well said.
It's not for me.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place for those, and at the right proof and the right age, it can be well done. What I think is really nice here with this is it just brings all of those delicate notes and puts them, like you said, well into balance. It's really, really nicely done.
Yeah.
I would put this in the A range for me.
Easily.
Excellent.
I mean, both of these are granted, this is the first time I've gotten the pleasure of trying this. And I don't know. I do feel as though, AnCnoc isn't mentioned in the conversations with some of the, most well-known, at least in the United States, Scotch brands. But I got turned on to it by somebody who's visited Scotland many times, and he's like, look, Cameron, you need to know about this brand. It is absolutely fantastic, especially dollar for dollar. He's put it up against anything else in the similar price point. And that's what I would also echo to the consumer too, is it's a beautiful pour, and it should very much be in the same conversations with a lot of these other brands. So
yeah. I would add, if you had given me a pour of this 18, I may not have been able to peg it immediately as a Highland single malt versus, say, a lot of, I've felt through just the bottles I've got, for those on YouTube, you can see there's a nice collection of 120 odd scotches up there. I've leaned, just through my purchases and where my profiles have gone, I've leaned towards Speyside Scotch. Yeah. Pretty heavily in my purchasing history and habits. And here I'm finding these Highland whiskeys to be quite enjoyable and maybe a great substitute. So like I was, I was drinking some Kleinlich, and I really got into the 14-year-old Kleinlich that they have here in America. And I would say that this AnCnoc 12 is a great sub for that Kleinlich. And then this a AnCnoc 18 is a great sub for maybe like a Glenfarclas or something, where you've got that finish. I really like this as a sub.
Or that long row sherry cask finish that you have.
That's another one. Yes. But then we're getting into Isla. But but just between the Space Side and Highland, I'd love to hear if someone were coming to you and saying, Gordon, what is the difference between a Space Side and a Highland Scotch on the whole? If you were going to summarize one versus the other, how would you define the differences in flavor and notes?
I suppose Space Sides have traditionally been classed as very light, very clean, estery, fruity, elegant whiskies. Highlanders have been characteristics, maybe slightly heavier, a wee bit more depth of character, maybe slightly longer finishes than some of your average Space Side whiskies. So that's in the mouth, that's in the glass, and geographically, it's also we're just geographically we're just right in the Space Side region, so we could class ourselves as a Space Side whiskey if we chose to. We've got a foot in the Highlands, we've got a foot in the Space Side. So if you've got the geo thing switched on this, you can take pictures of one side of the courtyard, you're in Aberdeenshire, and you can take pictures on the other side of the courtyard, you're in Murray, which are our neighbouring regions, neighbouring counties.
Was that an accident?
So yeah, geographically.
Was it an accident or was it done deliberetely?
Not a clue. No idea.
There are some neighboring. You are not the only neighboring distillery that kind of dips toes in both regions. There are others, correct?
Yeah.
There are a few.
I suppose, well, nearest neighbour-wise, we've got Glendronach, Ardmore. What have we got? Heading back that way, Strathisla, Glenkeith, and then slightly further out you get Glentochers. So yeah, there's a few that could class themselves either Highland or Space Side.
Yeah, I've heard of.
But I think we've got a slightly. Oh, sorry, time lag again. I think we've got a slightly more complex dram, slightly longer, a bit more depth, and maybe a slightly longer finish than we would associate with a Space Side whiskey.
You know, this is gosh, this is incredible. It's such good Scotch. What I would love to know from you, Gordon, is you strike me as a guy who just simply loves what he does and speaks very eloquently about the place that you're in. Do you have any other friends or distilleries that you're just like, hey, I really think that these places deserve a lot more attention because they, like AnCnoc, are doing amazing things as well?
Oh, wow. I've tried Dalmunach for the first time.
Never even heard of it.
It's the shiny new distillery, the old Imperial site up near Carlin.
Okay.
Dalmunach. So I think it's just set to get released as a single malt. Team leader up there, I'm actually quite close to the team leader up there. She's my eldest daughter. So yeah, I do like their whiskey.
There you go, keeping it in the family.
Yeah. I thought we had a bit of a busman's holiday. We took the guys out. We visited a couple of distilleries a couple of years ago, just at summer shutdown time. We visited Dalmunach and Ballindalach, so opposite ends of the technology spectrum and scale. And my guys they thought I was taking the piss. We got to nose some new make spirit in Dalmunach, and they thought they were nosing new make spirit from Knockdhu. The new makes are so similar, it's scary. So wow. Yeah, that's going to be a decent dram.
Wow.
This is almost political. I'll ramble on and I'll answer the question I want to answer rather than the question I was asked. I should be a politician. Yeah.
No, we appreciate it. So Gordon, we have poured this
Rascan,
the peated. So this is what's interesting to me, which is I didn't really know up until we were doing this podcast that AnCnoc was doing anything peated. And what's interesting to me, and Seth, you were the one who pointed this out as we were pouring it, is this thing is, as light as it can be. I mean, it is.
I can see right through it.
Yes. So what I'd love to know is how long have you guys been doing peated Scotch? Because this is, this isn't what Highland or Speyside is really known
Smell
for.
it yet?
Not
Smell
yet.
That. Smell that thing.
It's not what any of these regions are known for. And why did you guys decide to do it? And I kind of want to just know your thoughts on peat in general.
Okay. But 2004, 2005, as a group, as a company, we had to buy peated new make spirit or peated whiskies from third parties to use in our blends. So 2004, 2005, decision was made, we'll try processing some batches of heavily peated malt through Knockdhu. The layout of the distillery is ideal for doing these small trials or small batches. So it was only a couple of tons of heavily peated malt that was processed that year. And then over the years, the quantity of peat that we process each year is getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it was only ever going to be used for blended whiskey. But there's so much interest in peated whiskies these days. And the peated whiskey was maturing so well. It was about 4 or 5 years ago, decision was made to launch a peated variant or some peated variants of AnCnoc. And I absolutely adore this whiskey. Before we had the peated ones available, my Christmas Day whiskey was a good measure of 12-year-old. Mixed in a wee drop of heavily peated whiskey to produce my own lightly peated AnCnoc. That was a dram for me. And I'm just so pleased with these things. I think the balance is absolutely beautiful. We got these.
It's a cool.
We still got the lovely, fresh, fruity estery notes.
You see the fingerprint?
Of the 12-year-old. Mm-hmm.
It's cool.
Yeah, keep going. You're fine.
And I think the balance, the fresh, fruity estery keynotes we expect with AnCnoc has been balanced beautifully with smoke. I mean, some of these heavily peated whiskies, you can taste anything but smoke. It's like licking an ashtray. It's not particularly pleasant. But I do like these.
I mean, the mouthfeel is incredible. What I really, really love about this is one of those ones where you just want to slide your tongue from front to back because there's this, and the body itself is not actually that thick. It's
the
this
finish.
It's all the way
omnipresent. The finish is omnipresent.
Yes.
It's just never ending, and it's really crazy. And what's even crazier is you've done something that few brands do. Is you've included the ppm, the phenols or parts per million, 11.1, very low on the scale. We call it the Richter scale, right? The earthquake magnitude here. I've got an Octomore with 201 ppm or something like that. So
sure.
This is 5% of that roughly. So, but still smoky.
Yeah, but
brown.
It's very important. You need to compare like with like. That 11.1 is actual phenol content in the bottle. Octomore state the phenol content in the malted barley. So there's a world of difference there.
I did not know that.
Okay, interesting. Tell us more about that.
Yeah, what changes and what's the difference there?
Yeah, well, Rascan has been made with peated malt. The phenol content is probably around 45, 48 parts per million in the raw material in the malted barley. Now, when you mash the stuff, you throw away some phenols with your draft when you discharge your draft. When you ferment the wash, you've got phenol losses just to the atmosphere. You can smell it. When we're running peated malt here, everything stinks of smoke. And if things are stinking of smoke, that's phenols we're losing to the atmosphere.
Your clothes.
You go home from work at night, your clothes smell of smoke, the dogs smell of smoke. If you still had hair, it would smell of smoke. It's absolutely wonderful. You lose a lot of phenols in the wash still, they're discharged with pot ale. You lose phenols in the spirit still, they're discharged with spent lees. And phenols also decay very, very quickly once they get to cask. So yeah, if you taste a very, very old, traditionally peated whiskey, you maybe find there's not a great deal of smoke in that bottle at all. The confusion between the phenol count in the bottle or in the malt is it's raged on for years, and I think we need to educate people a wee bit about that. Rascan was one of a series of 4 and possibly 5 different expressions that were named after peat cutting tools. We had different phenol levels in each of the different expressions. I think the heaviest one was Cutter, which is still available in some parts of the States, and that's 20.5 ppm in the bottle. But once again, that's been a 45, 48 ppm in the malted barley. And things are getting very, very confusing for people. So we don't do Rascan. Rascan's discontinued. That you shouldn't have opened that bottle. That's actually quite collectible. We don't do Rascan, Cutter, Flutter, Tusker anymore. We now have Peat Heart. We've just moved on to Peat Heart Batch 2, which is going to be our constant addition, our constant peated addition to the range. But they've moved from stating the phenol content in the liquid to the phenol content in the malted barley. So Peat Heart Batch 1, Peat Heart Batch 2 has got a stated content of 40 ppm. The phenol content in the liquid's going to be quite a bit less, but that's what we started off with in the malt. And it's just to try and achieve a bit more consistency what other people are doing.
So that's really interesting to me. So this technically is a discontinued bottle, but you're obviously still doing peated whiskey. What's the change, and why are you? I mean, look, you just talked about the difference in stating the phenol content in the bottle versus the mash, but what's the difference between essentially what people can get now, and why did you make that change?
I think because we had 4 or 5 different expressions about the same time as Rascan came out, and some markets couldn't get the new expression until they sold through with the previous expression, and it was so untidy, it was so cluttered, and it was so messy. We had different expressions all over the place, and it was just becoming a right pain in the butt for the sales team. So just for consistency's sake, we'll just kill those off, and we'll just have a peated expression, and we'll call it Peat Heart. Most other distillers, they will use the phenol content in the malted barley if they're going to state a phenol number on the bottle. So we've just kind of followed in line with doing what the rest of these guys are doing, just for a little bit of consistency.
You've gone with the most common denominator, right, of choice of peat or ppm statements. So was there anyone else that was doing the phenol per bottle versus phenol per barley?
Yeah, no, I think that was unique to us.
So really, if I'm hearing correctly, it was you guys who were kind of stating it your own way, and everyone else was doing this kind of one-line thing. It sounds like that.
I'm just a daft laddie who's paid to make the stuff.
Yes.
I love that. Well, I want to piggyback off that. It's such a great topic. It's such a great question.
Great.
What do you feel as though, is there another realm or a misconception or something that, today's, for the
Scotch drinker.
Yes, today's Scotch drinkers, what is another misconception, or what would you like people to be more educated on?
Well, age. People do tend to get a little bit focused on age, don't they? Yeah. Older is not necessarily better. It's certainly going to be more expensive, but there's no guarantee it's going to be better.
What's the age on the Rascan? Are you allowed to even give a range or
Rascan? Yeah, it'll probably be a mixture of 8 to 12-year-old whiskies.
8 to 12.
Peated whiskies work better when they're younger. They're a bit fresher. You get a bit more phenol content. They're a bit livelier.
I was a huge fan of the Wee Beastie. I thought that was a really nice dram at 5-year-old. And I've had, Octomores come out at 3, 4, 5 years old as well. And those are also great. So I agree. And this is actually even old for peated by those standards.
Yeah.
So you're getting a lot more.
Have you tried water on that yet?
Not yet.
I drank all of mine.
I know. I'm happy to pour a little bit more.
And we do have to drink a little more after this.
This
so
is true.
I have to drink a lot more after this.
Well,
show.
what I want to tell people is that, look, of course, when you think peat, you think Isla, and you do not have to immediately think that region, because I think there are some beautiful, like the peat smoke pairs so nicely with this bright, fresh zestiness, fruitiness, this lightness that, you'd think, okay, well, peat is such a heavy smoke. It needs to be dark. It needs to be moody. It does not have to be whatsoever. And this is a fantastic example of something that can be very, very fresh, bordering on almost effervescent, while bringing that lovely peat on the back as it goes down. And the peat actually just adds to its mouthfeel, which is lovely.
Much to my surprise, the 11.1 threw me off, of course, equating this to other ppm scores or ratings or listings, because I saw 11 and I was like, okay, well, this is going to be real light in the peat department. It is not. And for all the reasons we just covered, don't let that throw you off. If you do see a bottle of this, not only have we just discovered it's extremely rare, and we would not
extremely good.
We would not have rather opened this with anyone else but you, Gordon.
Exactly.
So we're very happy to have it open and to be drinking it with you. There's no better occasion. So,
well, Gordon,
peat's source is very important.
Please tell us a little bit about
peat source. Yeah. The peat that we use for our peat whiskies here comes from Aberdeenshire, so it's a local peat. So the chemical composition of the peat is very similar to the peat we would have used here 125 years ago. And the Scotch Whisky Research Institute did a massive study on the different chemical compounds in peats from different geographic regions of Scotland. So they looked at Orkney peat, Islay peat, Tomintoul peat, and Aberdeenshire peat. Islay peat's got a really high level of a compound called 4-methyl guaiacol, and that's the one that gives you that medicinal TCP taste and nose. Whilst Aberdeenshire peat's got a really low level of that compound. So Aberdeenshire peat tends to give more of a wood ash, a bonfire smoke, rather than a medicinal smoke. And that's one of the biggest kicks we get. We get visitors to the distillery, they'll come in and they'll look at the peated expression, and if they had a tour and they had a couple of drams, they, oh no, I don't like peated whiskey at all. And the number of people that we managed to persuade to try one, and they realise they do actually like peated whiskey at the end of the day, it's great. Man, we get a real kick out of that. And even my assistant manager here doesn't like peat, or he didn't like peat, I should say. But he's definitely come round to... The different peat makes such a difference as well. So it's not just the overall number, but it's the source of your peat, which is really, really important too.
Yeah,
beautiful.
Wow, I feel like I've learned just in the last hour a tremendous amount about peat, Scotch, geography, the ecology of it all, and wow, I mean. I'm blown away. I liked the Rascan when I tried it. I liked it even more today in the context of the distillery and its ranges. There's even
look at these just couldn't be more dissimilar, and yet all three are extremely good in their own right.
There's a whiskey here for everybody in all three of these bottles, and you cover in just 3 bottles. You cover a wide range of different types, from a real sherry heavy, a peated, and a very, very everyday drinking, beautiful 12-year-old Scotch whiskey here. So what's in the future for AnCnoc? What should we look for in the coming months or years? And what are your
survival? I'm not sure. We also have a 24-year-old which should be available in some states. We changed importers about 2 years ago. We're now working with Hoteling, who are doing a really good job for our brands in the States. I think they've got a product finder on their webpage, so you can just go to the home page, find the product finder, and key in the product you're looking for, and they'll tell you what state, what stores are stocking these products. So that's well worth a look. 24-year-old is fantastic. It's 21 years bourbon, another 3 years in sherry. And that's one of these whiskies you want to sniff and sip on a Saturday night. It's one of these ones you switch off your mobile phone and just piss it off, leave me alone. This is my time.
My time. My time whiskey.
Yeah. We are going to have another vintage expression later this year. It's a couple of years since we've done a vintage. So the vintages have been bottled 13, maybe 14 years old. They've all been quite different. Best way to describe them. Their natural colour, 46% alcohol, non-chill filtered again. And the interesting thing about the vintages, they're all so different. The first one we did was 1991, which is all bourbon mature. If you can find the bottle, grab it. It's absolutely stunning. The other standout ones for me were 1994, which was essentially the little brother of the old 30-year-old we did. The similarities were just amazing. 1999, if you can find one, is absolutely dog's bollocks. It's so vibrant and fresh and fruity. There's a 2002 vintage kicking about. You might have some of that in the States. Might still be some available in Canada. If you can find the 2002, grab it. It's lovely. It was very similar to a 16-year-old cask strength that we launched a year and a half ago to celebrate 125th anniversary.
Just going to ask if how many cask strength bottlings or single barrel bottlings
Oh,
have
I'd
you guys
love
done?
to have this at cask strength.
Have you done anything like that, or is there any of that floating around in the States?
Recently, to celebrate our 125th anniversary, October 2019, we launched 2 very limited editions. It was 3,000 bottles, 500 cases of each expression. So they were very, very limited. The 16-year-old for me was a standout. It was all first fill, dechar, rechar, ex-bourbons. And it wasn't finished or further matured or anything. So that liquid spent 16 years of its life in the same cask it was filled into. 54, 55% alcohol. Quite happily took a couple of drops of water, and it was bouncy, zesty, zingy. It was a whiskey that made you want to dance or tap your feet. It was great. It was vibrant. I would hardly recommend that one. If you can find them on the UK high street, they were £100, which for a quality cask strength 16-year-old whiskey, that was a very, very good price. Yeah.
Take my money. Just take it.
Yes, exactly.
One other parting thing. I understand, Gordon, you have started your own podcast. Is that correct?
Oh dear. Yeah.
Come on, you gotta promote it.
Let's promote it. Let's promote it here so we can get you some.
I'd
listeners.
love to link to it. Yeah.
I feel like the people listening to this like podcasts, and you being somebody that's gonna enter the realm of the podcast world, here's a bunch of podcast listeners. Why don't you tell them about your show?
Well, six weeks ago, I'd never even listened to a podcast, far less post one. I've no idea how I got talked into doing this. It's not a whiskey podcast. It's a whiskey about speaking to people who enjoy what they do, take a pride in what they do. So the first one, we spoke to Jared Hempstead from Balcones Distillery. What a really nice guy. So generous with his time, his responses. That was a good conversation. A few weeks ago, we spoke to a local cheesemaker. Whiskey and cheese, what more could a body ask for? So if you've got blue cheese, a Strathdom blue, a Stilton, or a Rockford, a blue cheese and a peated whiskey, a match made in heaven.
Wow. Okay.
Last week we spoke to another distiller in another European country. I better not say too much until that one's released. So it's a new thing. We're still finding our feet.
What is it called?
It's called Knocktails.
Knocktails.
There you go. Beautiful.
Knocktails.
And it's on Spotify or Apple or some of these.
I'll tell you what. I'll find a link to it. I'll make sure.
No idea.
It's okay. I will definitely
We'll
find a
it.
link to it. We'll make sure all of our listeners. Well, just because I do feel as though you have an ability to speak to the connection of the handmade. You speak to the person that's working to make the things that we get to enjoy in front of us. And I think you do a very fantastic job of just giving a voice to all the people that you don't see when you pick up a bottle of this, you know? And that's actually what I love about podcasts is it gives that voice.
Well, thank you so
Gordon,
much for
it's been a pleasure.
Educating and elaborating on all these beautiful whiskeys. I can't wait to show these to more people. I was keeping them closed until today, but now that they're open, I've got a lot of people that need to taste this, and that'll come through this space. And so we're looking forward to sharing these with a lot of people and spreading the word. This is amazing whiskey.
Sincerely, thank you so much for sharing your time.
And your whole team.
Jeez, I'm blushing here. This is the... Thank you both very much for having me on today. The things that you do are so important for our industry. They do make such a difference. So I will raise a glass and say slange. Thank you very much for your time, gents, and
Cheers.
Keep doing what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Take
much,
care.
Gordon. Have a good evening.
The spirits consumed on this show are available at caskcartel.com. They are America's largest online premium spirits marketplace. You can follow us on social media at Cartel Hour, where you can find information about upcoming episodes as well as the free spirits giveaways we do quite often. And if you're a spirits brand that would like to come on the podcast, please email us at host@cartelhour.com or send us a direct message on Instagram. Our theme music is by Verified Picasso. Thank you everyone for listening, and remember to always drink responsibly and in good company.